Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in one of the most publicly scrutinized and frankly most chilling modern mysteries, the 2013 death of Elisa Lam.
It's a case that really sits at this strange intersection of documented mental illness, the very dark history of a specific location, the Stay on Main Hotel.
Which most people know as the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles.
Exactly. And then you have this genuinely bizarre set of logistical circumstances that just seem to defy common sense.
It's essential right away to define our mission here. So much of the talk around Elisa Lam is it's fueled by speculation, by online theories, and a lot of true crime sensationalism.
Right. So our goal is really to cut through that noise. We want to act as impartial guides to the actual source material. We're talking about the police reports, the coroner's findings, and the documented timeline to give you, the listener, a factual map of this tragedy.
At the center of this story is Elisa Lam, or Lam Hoi. She was a 21-year-old Canadian student from the University of British Columbia, and her story is, at its core, one of immense personal struggle and just profound loss. A young traveler so far from home.
And we have to acknowledge the painful paradox from the very beginning. The official legal finding from the Los Angeles County coroner was accidental drowning.
Right, accidental.
And her diagnosed bipolar disorder was cited as the significant contributing factor. But this firm, closed finding exists in constant tension with the truly unsettling circumstantial evidence.
Most famously, that 2.5 minutes of security camera footage, that is, to this day, a global viral enigma.
It really is.
So let's lock down the grim specifics of the timeline first. Elisa Lam was last seen alive on January 31st, 2013.
And her disappearance started this intense search that went on for nearly 3 weeks. Her body was finally discovered on February 19th, 2013.
And the place of discovery is it's key to understanding the sheer horror that unfolded for the other guests at the hotel.
It is. Her body was found in one of 4 massive cisterns on the rooftop of the hotel. And these are not decorative tanks. They are the primary water supply.
Each one holding 1,000 gallons.
1,000 gallons. Servicing the hotel's guest rooms, the kitchen, and the cocktail shop on the ground floor.
The only reason a maintenance worker even went up to the rooftop wasn't for a routine check. It was because of a whole series of complaints from guests.
For several days, guests have been reporting really low water pressure, which was already an issue. But much, much more disturbingly, some guests were claiming the water from their taps was discolored.
Often described as black or brownish.
Yes, and that it had an unusual, terrible taste and odor.
It's just horrifying to think about.
The maintenance worker who was called up to investigate the pressure problem made the discovery. The realization that for days, guests had been bathing, drinking, maybe even preparing food with water contaminated by human remains. It's a layer of suffering in this case that you just can't overstate.
It really underscores the immense tragedy and the unique, appalling environment where this young woman's life ended.
So to begin building that factual chronology, we have to start with the medical context. This is the official conclusion really hinges on.
What did the sources tell us about Elisa Lam's history with mental illness?
The sources are quite explicit. She was formally diagnosed with bipolar disorder and also with depression. And for anyone who knows about these conditions, simply listing the sheer number and the power of her prescribed medications immediately suggests a very serious, complex, and high-risk case.
One that required continuous, diligent management.
Absolutely.
We know her regimen included bupropion, lamotrigine, quetiapine, dextroamphetamine, and venlafaxine. That's a 5-drug cocktail. Let's just pause on that for a second. What does that specific combination tell us about how severe her condition was?
Well, it tells us she was managing multiple high-risk symptoms at the same time. You have bupropion and venlafaxine, which are antidepressants for the depressive lows. Then lamotrigine, which is a powerful mood stabilizer, critical for preventing those shifts into mania. Quetiapine is an antipsychotic, and that's often used to manage severe acute symptoms of psychosis, hallucinations, extreme paranoia, especially during manic episodes.
And the last one, dextroamphetamine.
That's a stimulant. It's often used to counteract medication-induced fatigue or maybe treat comorbid ADHD, but it carries its own risks. It can actually make anxiety or psychosis worse if it's not perfectly balanced with the stabilizers.
So it's like the pharmaceutical equivalent of trying to maintain a highly calibrated machine. If one part fails, the whole system can just collapse.
That's a great way to put it. And the sources point directly to a failure in adherence, which becomes a really critical background detail here.
Absolutely critical. Lam had a documented history of not always sticking to her medication regimen.
Right. She didn't always take the prescribed doses, or sometimes she might have stopped taking certain drugs altogether.
Yeah.
And the documented consequences of that were severe.
It led to pronounced hallucinations sometimes, didn't it?
Yes. So terrifying that she would seek refuge, sometimes hiding under her bed. We know she'd been hospitalized at least once for these kinds of severe psychotic episodes that came from noncompliance.
It really paints a picture of an intense, terrifying internal struggle, even if it wasn't something you could see on the outside.
And while her family reportedly kept her mental illness private, and they emphasized she had no history of suicidal thoughts or attempts, there was one report mentioning a brief disappearance.
That suggests a pattern, maybe, of instability and potential flight during a crisis?
It's highly consistent with unmedicated psychosis. Even if the intent wasn't self-harm, it could be an attempt to escape from perceived threats.
So let's move to her journey. She was traveling alone through California using Amtrak and intercity buses.
Right, she'd visited the San Diego Zoo. She was posting on social media, enjoying the typical sights of a traveler, before she arrived in Los Angeles on January 26, 2013.
And she checked into the Stay on Main, the Cecil Hotel, 2 days later on January 28th.
And the circumstances of her initial hotel assignment are really the first hard signs of the impending crisis.
She was first put in a shared room on the 5th floor, but that only lasted 2 days. The hotel had to move her to a private room.
Because her roommates complained about her, quote, certain odd behavior.
And we know what some of that behavior was. The hotel manager at the time, Amy Price, she gave specific examples.
She did. Lam was reportedly leaving these unsettling notes for her roommates. Things like go home and go away.
And she was also described as locking the door and requiring a specific password for anyone to enter their shared room.
That specific behavior, the paranoia, this intense need for boundary setting, the perception of a threat from people who should be safe, it's just chillingly consistent with the onset of acute psychosis.
Especially when you factor in the history of non-adherence to her antipsychotic medication.
And this behavior wasn't just in the hotel. There was a documented event before her disappearance that showed this escalating erratic behavior in public.
The taping of Conan.
Exactly. Just a few days before she vanished, Lam was actually escorted off the premises by security during a live taping of Conan in Burbank because she was being disruptive.
So the psychotic episode was already building, showing up in public ways long before January 31st.
Which brings us to that final day, January 31st, 2013. She was scheduled to check out and continue her trip north to Santa Cruz.
And she was a very communicative daughter. She contacted her parents in British Columbia every single day throughout her trip.
So on the 31st, when they didn't hear from her, it was immediately alarming. That evening, they contacted the LAPD, and then they flew down to Los Angeles to help with the search.
The last known sightings are so contradictory, which really reflects the intermittent nature of her struggle, doesn't it?
It does. Hotel staff confirmed seeing her alone. But the last external sighting outside the hotel was from Katie Orphan, the manager of the last bookstore.
And she remembered Lam buying gifts, described her as outgoing, very lively, very friendly.
They even talked about the weight of the books she was getting. It suggests she was still planning on continuing her trip, exhibiting normal social behavior.
And that's the critical humanizing contrast. You have evidence of extreme psychosis and paranoia inside the hotel, but then moments before she disappears, you have this portrait of a lucid, engaging young woman making plans.
It just underscores the swift, unpredictable, and devastating nature of the condition she was battling.
So after the family's report, the LAPD launches their investigation. But their search efforts were, they were immediately limited by legal constraints, which later fueled a lot of online skepticism.
The police searched Lam's room, and they used trained police dogs throughout the entire building, including the rooftop where the water tanks were.
But the dogs were unsuccessful. They didn't detect her scent anywhere.
And the constraint was clear. Sergeant Rudy Lopez stated publicly, "We didn't search every room." He explained that they needed probable cause to believe a crime had been committed to enter every guest's private space.
So without an obvious sign of foul play, like blood or a struggle, they were legally restricted from doing a full room-to-room sweep.
A week goes by. On February 6th, with no leads, the LAPD releases a public alert. They put out flyers, posted information online, hoping the general public might have seen her.
But the investigation really shifted from just a missing persons case to a global mystery on February 13th. That's 2 weeks after she vanished.
Right, when the LAPD made the unprecedented decision to release the security camera footage from the elevator. This is the 2.5 minutes that fundamentally defines the entire case for millions of people.
It's such an unnerving piece of video. It just captures this highly erratic and, well, non-rational sequence of actions.
Lam enters the elevator alone. Her first move is to press, seemingly at random, all the buttons on the control panel. Like she's trying to get the car to go to multiple floors at once.
She then waits, but the doors, they fail to close, and her behavior just rapidly escalates from there.
She starts peering out into the hallway, leaning in and out of the doorframe, scanning left and right. Then she retreats to the back corner of the car, as if she's trying to hide or maybe seeking refuge.
The doors still don't close, and she steps out again, moving off to the right, and starts making these unusual, flowing, almost balletic hand and body gestures.
Many people immediately interpreted those as communication, or maybe a physical attempt to influence the elevator, or even an interaction with an unseen person or entity.
And then she leaves the frame completely. And what's so critical is that only after she's gone does the elevator door finally close and the car moves.
The whole sequence is just inexplicable if you're looking at it through the lens of rational, sober behavior.
The reaction was immediate and massive. This video went viral all over the world.
The sources record that on Youku, the Chinese video sharing site, the footage got 3 million views and 40,000 comments in just the first 10 days. The unsettling nature of it just captivated the public.
And this viral response immediately generated 3 dominant theories, all based solely on what people were seeing before any autopsy provided chemical context.
Theory 1, the most common one early on. Lam was trying to get the elevator to move to escape her pursuer.
Her frantic button pushing and peering out, it really suggests she was hiding from or desperately avoiding someone coming down the hall.
Theory 2 looked for a chemical explanation, suggesting she was under the severe influence of party drugs, maybe something like ecstasy, which would account for the agitation, the unusual movements, and the apparent paranoia.
And then Theory 3, which gained more traction once her medical history became known.
Right, that she was suffering a severe, unmedicated psychotic episode driven by hallucinations and paranoid delusion, and she was reacting to things that only existed in her own mind.
But the scrutiny didn't just end with Lam's actions. A huge part of the online obsession was the speculation that the footage itself had been tampered with before the police released it.
These claims of tampering focused on a few key things. Viewers noted that the timestamp in the corner was deliberately obscured or blurred. They claimed parts of the footage were clearly slowed down, suggesting manipulation.
And the most incendiary claim was that nearly a minute of footage had been removed entirely.
Which led to this pervasive idea that the video was altered specifically to hide the identity of another person who was present, maybe an assailant, or maybe someone innocent whose identity the LAPD wanted to protect.
This tampering speculation just magnified the public skepticism surrounding the whole official investigation.
It solidified this notion that even if the police were claiming it was an accidental death, there was still some kind of effort to conceal critical evidence, making the official narrative inherently untrustworthy to online observers.
It's really a foundational element of why this mystery persists. It's a single, short piece of video evidence that appears to contradict everything the authorities ultimately concluded.
So that nearly 3-week vacuum of information ends abruptly on February 19th. And it wasn't driven by police work, but by a basic maintenance failure.
The complaints from guests about the low water pressure and the horrifying water quality finally led a hotel maintenance worker to the rooftop cisterns.
The discovery was grim. The worker found her body in one of those 4 1,000-gallon tanks. We just have to remember the scale of this. These were the tanks supplying the entire hotel.
And the worker spotted her lying face up in the water through the open maintenance hatch of the tank.
The retrieval itself was a major operation. Because the access hatch was too small for emergency personnel to get the body out, the fire department had to be called in.
They had to drain all 1,000 gallons of water and then use heavy equipment to physically cut the side of the metal tank open to extract her remains.
And that detail, having to cut the tank open, is a stark indicator of how inaccessible these structures were, which immediately brings up all these logistical questions about how she got in there.
But based on the initial assessment, the LA County Coroner's Office announced its findings pretty quickly.
On February 21st, the manner of death was ruled accidental drowning. Bipolar disorder was formally cited as a significant contributing factor.
And the full detailed coroner's report was released in June 2013, confirming the forensic basis for that ruling.
Let's get into the physical findings from that report. The body was moderately decomposed and bloated from the immersion time. The sources described the skin as mostly greenish, with clear marbling on the abdomen and some skin separation.
Those are all consistent signs of decomposition in water, right?
Yes. And crucially, the external examination found absolutely no evidence of physical trauma, sexual assault, or any defensive wounds. They also ruled out suicide, as there was no mitigating evidence or a note.
Lam's body was found naked, and the clothing she was last seen wearing in the elevator video, along with her watch and her room key, were all found floating in the water near her.
The clothing was also noted to be coated with a sand-like particulate.
The toxicology report is maybe the most powerful piece of evidence supporting the official conclusion because it pretty much eliminated all the alternative theories.
It confirmed the presence of traces of her prescription medications, along with non-prescription drugs like sinutab and ibuprofen. There was a minimal trace of alcohol, 0.02 grams percent.
Critically,
The report emphatically confirmed that no recreational drugs, no cocaine, no methamphetamine, no ecstasy, no THC were detected in her system.
which immediately invalidates that popular theory that she was high on party drugs during the elevator incident.
It does. The focus shifts entirely back to her prescribed medications. And the most crucial finding here was the concentration of those drugs, particularly the stabilizers and antipsychotics.
The concentrations indicated that she was either under-medicating or had recently stopped taking her medication for bipolar disorder.
So if the level was low, what does that really mean in the context of a severe disorder that requires such strict management?
Well, if you look at a drug like quetiapine, the antipsychotic, it's like a chemical governor. It locks down the neurotransmitters to prevent mania and psychosis. When a patient with a severe diagnosis abruptly stops taking that or takes insufficient doses,
The body's neurochemistry rapidly destabilizes.
exactly. The symptoms we saw in the elevator, the paranoia, the hypervigilance, the frantic, non-goal-oriented movements, are medically textbook signs of an acute, unmedicated, manic, or psychotic episode.
So the toxicology provides the perfect chemical basis for the behavior we see in that footage.
It does. But despite this seemingly closed chapter on the cause of death, the autopsy report itself continued to invite medical ambiguities and deep scrutiny from outside pathologists and observers.
This is where the narrative gets complex again. The report noted specific signs of decomposition that could be misinterpreted. Specifically, subcutaneous pooling of blood in Lam's anal area and a prolapsed rectum.
Now, the attending pathologist noted this was likely just a result of advanced decomposition and bloating in the water.
Right where the body's internal pressures change.
But others were quicker to suggest this might be a sign of sexual abuse, which kept the idea of foul play alive in the public consciousness.
And the incomplete forensic details only compounded that friction. The source material notes that the autopsy report failed to specify the results of the rape kit or the fingernail kit. It's unclear if they were fully processed or if the results were simply withheld or inconclusive.
Without absolute clarity from those tests, the coroner's official ruling of no sexual assault, while legally accepted, remains technically ambiguous for those looking for absolute forensic certainty.
There was also an internal element of doubt. Sources mentioned that the coroner's pathologists themselves felt ambivalent about their ultimate conclusion of accidental death.
Which suggests that even within the medical examiner's office, the lack of clarity around the mechanism of entry into the tank, combined with all the bizarre behavior, made it a less than satisfying open and shut case, even if the primary cause of death was medically sound. The forensic evidence points squarely to accidental drowning during a psychotic break. But for so many people, the case just can't be closed because of the sheer logistical impossibility.
The geometry of it. How a 21-year-old woman, in any state of mind, ended up inside a massive, sealed water tank.
The first layer of that mystery is just getting to the rooftop. The hotel claimed they had strict security measures.
Doors and stairs leading to the roof were supposedly locked, requiring staff passcodes and keys, and any forced entry should have triggered an alarm.
So if she was suffering from paranoid delusions, the need to get out would be intense, but the physical barrier should have stopped her.
So how did she get up there? The fire escape offers the most plausible route around the electronic security. Investigators noted that Lam's scent trail was lost near a window that connected to the fire escape.
And there's evidence supporting the poor maintenance of that area. A video posted after her death showed the roof was, in fact, easily accessible via the fire escape.
It suggests the security was either lax, or the alarms were ignored, Or that fire escape route was just readily available to anyone with the will to use it, regardless of their mental state.
But climbing the fire escape is only the first step. The second layer of difficulty is the tank itself. Forget accessing the roof for a moment. How do you get into one of those massive cisterns?
You have to visualize these things. They weren't just sitting flush on the roof. There were 4 massive 4 by 8 foot cylinders, elevated and propped up on concrete blocks, which makes them inherently tall.
High enough that the hotel worker who found her used a ladder just to inspect the water level?
And the source material explicitly states there was no fixed access. Workers had to use external equipment.
So she would have needed to climb onto the concrete blocks, then maybe find something else to stand on to reach the lip of the tank, and then the lid. They were described as heavy.
Very heavy. The lid was the next great hurdle. It would have been large and difficult for a person to lift, especially while also trying to climb. And once inside, it would be physically impossible to pull that heavy lid back into place from beneath the water.
But the key detail that undercuts part of the mystery, though not all of it, is that the hotel employee who found the body stated the lid was open when he saw her.
That detail is crucial. If the lid was already open, maybe left that way by maintenance, or if she managed to push it open and it just fell back slightly askew, it significantly lowers the bar for entry.
In a psychotic, agitated state, fueled by a perceived pursuit, the strength and determination to climb onto those blocks and enter a high, dark space, believing it's a refuge or a hiding spot, that is medically plausible.
But we still have the elephant in the room. The dog search contradiction. Police dogs, specifically trained for scent detection, searched the entire building, including the rooftop where the tanks were, shortly after her disappearance was reported.
And they detected nothing.
This is the major inconsistency that continues to undermine the timeline. If Lam entered the tank on January 31st, why did the dogs, which conducted their search very early in February, not indicate her presence or her scent on or near the rooftop?
That contradiction demands an explanation. If she wasn't in the tank on, say, February 6th, where was she hiding in a large but heavily searched downtown hotel for nearly 3 weeks?
And if she entered the tank after the dog search, what was she doing during that time? And how did she manage to access the tank without being seen?
The logical possibilities are unsettling. Either the dogs failed dramatically, which is possible but unlikely given their training,
or she was hidden inside a space the police legally couldn't search, like a sealed air duct or an unused maintenance area. Or the timeline of her death is completely shifted and she entered the tank much later in the month.
None of those scenarios fit perfectly with the narrative of a simple, immediate accidental drowning on January 31st, which is why that logistical mystery is so persistent.
Given the intense scrutiny this case received, even the seemingly mundane details created new avenues of doubt. One of the strangest circumstantial aspects is what's been called the digital ghost.
The mystery of Lam's continuing Tumblr activity after her death was confirmed.
Lam maintained a blog on Tumblr called Nouvelle Nouveau. After her body was found, her blog continued to update, publishing new posts for weeks, which naturally created immense public speculation about hacking, theft, or even the possibility that someone else was running the account.
For a well-informed audience, the most logical and technically viable explanation is Tumblr's queue option.
Yes, the queue feature is designed for exactly this, for travelers or busy users. It lets you pre-schedule dozens of posts, linking to images, reblogging content, publishing thoughts, to automatically release them at set times over days or weeks.
So if Lam had scheduled a large queue before her trip, the blog activity would just continue automatically even after her life had tragically ended.
Exactly. However, there is a piece of information that complicates that simple explanation. Lam's phone was not found with her body in the water tank, nor was it ever recovered from her room or anywhere in the hotel.
The missing phone is a separate, unresolved element. If it was stolen or if it was simply lost or damaged somewhere else, the possibility that someone else gained access to her accounts is certainly there.
But the use of the queue remains the most probable explanation for the regular scheduled updates, even if the missing device leaves that trail of uncertainty.
All these lingering ambiguities, the forensic friction, the logistical impossibilities, the digital ghost led directly to litigation against the hotel. In September 2013, Lam's parents filed a wrongful death suit.
They alleged that the Stay on Main Hotel failed in its duty of care. Specifically, they claimed the hotel failed to inspect and seek out hazards in the hotel that presented an unreasonable risk of danger.
Their argument hinged on the fact that if the roof had been properly secured, or if the tanks had been properly sealed and monitored, this death could have been prevented.
The family was seeking unspecified damages and demanding compensation for burial costs. They were arguing that the hotel's negligence in maintaining basic security and hygiene standards was the direct cause of their daughter's death.
But the hotel's defense was very specific, and it relied heavily on the official ruling of accidental death caused by psychosis.
They argued that they could not have reasonably foreseen that Lam, or any guest, might have entered the water tanks. This legal concept of reasonable foreseeability was key.
Since the exact method of entry was still unknown, and the act was deemed the result of an internal, unforeseeable health crisis, they argued no liability could be assigned for failing to prevent a scenario so highly improbable and unique.
The outcome arrived in 2015 when the suit was ultimately dismissed. The court concluded that the hotel had no duty to foresee such an unpredictable and unusual chain of events.
Which confirms the profound difficulty in assigning blame or demanding compensation when the actions of the deceased were driven by a severe, internal, unmedicated health crisis.
It was a difficult legal outcome for the family, but it reinforced that official narrative. Legally, the actions that led to her death were driven by her own medical state, not by a standard foreseeable hazard the hotel should have addressed.
Cases that marry genuine tragedy with bizarre public video evidence, they rarely fade away. They become integrated into the cultural mythos, and the Elisa Lam case is a perfect example.
The first and most striking cultural parallel noted right after the discovery was the similarity between the real-life events and the 2005 American horror film Dark Water.
It was a remake of a Japanese film, and the overlap is genuinely unsettling.
That film centered on a dysfunctional, run-down apartment building. The plot included a malfunctioning elevator, complaints from residents about dark, discolored water pouring from their taps.
And the climax of the story involved the discovery of a missing girl's body in a rooftop water tank of the building.
The resemblance is so specific, the combination of the historic location, the elevator malfunction, the contaminated water, and the rooftop tank discovery, that it seemed to many that the tragedy had perfectly mirrored a fictional horror scenario. This parallel just cemented the Cecil Hotel's history as a place where fact and fiction tragically blurred.
But the case quickly moved beyond just being a parallel and became a direct inspiration for new works across various media.
In television, crime dramas were really quick to incorporate the elements. Just months after the discovery, in May 2013, the ABC series Castle aired its season finale, Watershed.
And the plot featured a young woman found dead in the rooftop water tank of a fictional Cedric Hotel in Manhattan, and it even had elevator surveillance footage as a key piece of evidence.
Later, How to Get Away with Murder in 2014 incorporated a plot where a missing sorority girl's body was found in a house's water tank after complaints about water pressure. These quick, direct adaptations show how quickly the public and writers recognize the power of this specific sequence of events.
And maybe the most famous and explicit nod came in 2015 from Ryan Murphy, the creator of American Horror Story.
He stated that the entire fifth season, American Horror Story, Hotel, was specifically inspired by the viral surveillance video of a woman who got into an elevator at a downtown hotel and was never seen again.
He never named Lam, but the connection to the Cecil Hotel's history, which was the inspiration for the series' fictional Hotel Cortez, was unmistakable.
The international influence was also immediate. Director Liu Hao from mainland China announced plans for a film based on the case, and he even stayed at the Cecil for research. A Hong Kong film, Hungry Ghost Ritual, included a scene that deliberately mimicked the unsettling look of security camera footage showing a ghost terrorizing a woman in an elevator, directly capitalizing on the imagery of the Lam footage.
This quick rush to adapt the story wasn't without controversy, though.
No. The film script The Bringing, planned in 2014, which aimed to use the investigation into Lam's case as a backdrop for a fictional detective, drew significant criticism for exploiting the recent raw tragedy of her death so soon after the event.
It really raised questions about the ethics of capitalizing on real, recent trauma for entertainment.
And the case also deeply penetrated the music world. The Vancouver pop duo The Zolas released Ancient Mars in 2014, and they consciously created a music video intended to be an idealized representation of Lam's last day, trying to portray her as a real girl rather than just a grim footnote.
The post-hardcore band Hail the Sun addressed the specifics with their track Disappearing Syndrome, calling the case chilling and eerie.
And the industrial rock band SKYND released a single titled Elisa Lam in 2018. Its music video starkly and deliberately recreated the actual, specific moments of the elevator security footage, further immortalizing those unsettling images.
But the influence wasn't only focused on honoring or fictionalizing the event, it also fueled some fringe conspiracy theories.
Right. In 2017, the band Sun Kil Moon released songs like Window Sash Waits and Stranger Than Paradise. The band member, Mark Kozolek, explicitly promoted the idea that the death was a hoax.
His rationale was based on the fact that the girl's face was pixelated in the elevator video, which suggested to him a lack of official identification confirmation, a claim that is entirely inconsistent with the official autopsy, which did confirm her identity.
It just shows how quickly public uncertainty can be weaponized to promote baseless conspiracy theories.
The case continues to be a staple in the true crime genre, maintaining its grip on the public through various documentaries and streaming series. BuzzFeed Unsolved, The Ghost Adventure Special, and of course the massive 2021 Netflix docuseries Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel.
Even the gaming world got involved, though controversially. The 2019 RPG YI, a postmodern RPG, incorporated a character whose disappearance disturbingly mirrored Lam's, drawing significant criticism for being exploitative and distasteful.
Essentially, the Elisa Lam case has become a modern urban legend because it successfully merges all the elements of compelling horror, the voyeuristic, technologically mediated evidence,
It's the surveillance video.
the historical context of a cursed location, the Cecil Hotel, the stark reality of human vulnerability and her mental illness, and the persistent lack of absolute satisfying certainty.
So as we synthesize everything we've extracted from the source material, the core facts remain officially settled. Elisa Lam died due to accidental drowning.
And her diagnosis of bipolar disorder was confirmed as a major contributing factor, supported by toxicology reports that ruled out illicit drugs and confirmed she was under-medicating her critical prescription regimen.
Those facts provide a legal and medical closure,
Yeah.
but they have to be weighed against the persistent circumstantial enigmas that just refuse to be reconciled.
The footage depicting that non-rational, desperate behavior in the elevator, the extreme physical difficulty of accessing those high, heavy-lidded water tanks.
The contradiction presented by the failed initial police dog search, and the lingering mystery of her post-mortem digital activity.
What this case reveals, perhaps more profoundly than any other contemporary investigation, is the immense importance of properly understanding mental health factors within these complex public mysteries.
When acute psychosis converges with an environment that's notorious for its dark history and its specific logistical contradictions, the result is not clarity. The result is global online obsession.
This tragedy forces us to confront the inherent limits of forensic science when it's faced with actions driven by an internal crisis. The world seeks a clean narrative murder, suicide, or a simple, explainable accident.
But in the case of Elisa Lam, we are left with the ruling of accidental that is technically supported by forensic evidence, yet perpetually challenged by the bizarre reality of every other detail we know about her final hours.
It leaves us with a final thought. When the circumstances are this unique and the only certainty is immense tragedy, how much weight should we place on the legal conclusion of accidental when the path to that conclusion remains logically and physically obscured? That gap between forensic fact and circumstantial disbelief is why the story continues to resonate and terrify so many years later.